real quick, while you're here,
Yeah.
let me do a sort of somewhat of a hard segue here that
Okay.
you weren't ready for, but you're always ready for, because I forgot that this came out. Somebody was pointing. A couple people have been asking me to say something, and I said, "Well, I need Todd to fully do this." So since we were reminiscing, on my dissertation committee
Right.
was the late great Ron Walters,
Yes.
and I will always say I have no problem calling him great, because while we had vast differences politically, he never demeaned people to his left. He never ignored people to his left. He never refused to support people to his left. And for that, I have always been appreciative. He was very much somewhere else. So
he had met. I read a biography of him. I got to meet him, talk to him. He made some decisions in the 70s based on the reality of the 70s.
And he admitted it and was conscious of it.
He said he stopped calling himself a revolutionary when the African revolutionaries said, "Where are your gun factories?" And if you don't have gun factories, and you ain't doing nothing.
But he also said, because I'm not supporting those like I'm not doing that. So he was saying, I'm not demeaning people who want to do it. He never got I never saw him publicly get anywhere and say, those lunatics, he just said, look, I'm not doing that. I'm putting on a tie. I'm teaching at Howard. I'm teaching at Maryland. I'm talking to the CBC. I'm talking to the Congress people, to the Black Congress people. That's what I'm doing.
But at the same time, who was coming to his office? ANC leaders, all
everybody,
future presidents of South Africa, everybody.
And when I showed up to defend my dissertation wearing what I thought was my nicest Bob Marley shirt,
right,
he looked down over his name.
Right.
He said, "That's what we're doing."
Right, exactly.
But he said, "Okay." He said, and he signed off. He didn't stop me though. Signed off.
Right.
Now I bring him up because the last thing I think he ever published, because he was also a writer for the Black Press, by the way. That was another
columnist. I used to edit his column.
No, that's right. So that's what I'm saying.
His column at NPA, right?
And if I'm not mistaken, one of the last things he ever wrote before he passed away.
Right.
And I remember I will always feel a little guilty because I was a little frustrated because he had promised to write me a letter of recommendation for tenure, and I was coming up for tenure.
Sure.
And it was late. And I sent him an email saying, Dr. Walters, what's up? And he had already just died like the day or two before or something like that. So it was like, I always felt a little bad, like, damn.
What I was always frustrated about, and maybe I shouldn't be, was that he was clearly dying, and Howard was begging him to come back. He had retired from Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And Howard was begging for him to come back, and he was getting ready to go back to Howard. And I started cussing. I was like, we need your brain. We need you to sit down and write some more books. We don't need that. You did that already. And he left Howard, let's be honest. He left Howard because Howard was still treating him like it was some guy in the political science department. Maryland may have
given Howard did, but Howard has a long history of treating big time Black intellects.
Let's not go there. And look. Maryland gave him a basement office with no windows, but they gave him a full-time secretary. And the way it was told to me, they gave him a check and said, fill out your salary.
That was what I was going to add. Because I went to that office on a number of occasions, a nice big space with no windows, factual.
Right.
But it came with, but he didn't have to be in there very often.
Right, exactly.
And the house I also visited that he lived in had plenty of big ass windows.
Now let's talk about that house. Let's talk about that house. I want you to get your point. Let's talk about that house for a second. When you read the book on Ron Walters, now by the way, I wrote a review. Dr. Ball remembers this. I wrote a review of this biography on Ron Walters, great biography that we printed on iMWiL. And somebody from the Black press stole it.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember this? They stole it and they sold it to a national magazine. You don't remember this, but they stole it and they sold it to a national magazine. And I had to email the editor of the national magazine and said, I'm really glad you liked the article, but who sold this to you? And the guy wouldn't tell me who sold it to him. Do you remember that? You remember that?
No, I don't, but I'm not surprised. You've quietly put a lot of gems on my website. I mean, you know, it's like there's a lot of gems, so I'm not surprised somebody would have wanted to come and snatch it. But I didn't. That's deep. That's.
But please go to your point. Please go to your point.
So anyway, so the last story that I remember that I think Dr. Walters wrote for the Black press was a condemnation of the Obama campaign for breaking that traditional role of every 4 years the Democrats come through and sprinkle a whole bunch of money on the Black press to get Black people to fall in line with the Democrat. Now, of course, Walters didn't write it this way, but that was his point. That now Obama's taking us for granted. You're just coming through here. You're just gonna get yourself elected, and you're not gonna sprinkle. You're not gonna come and sprinkle me, man. You're not gonna. And then, sure enough, a number of people have sent me a couple of versions of this where I don't know Jasmine Wright, but Jasmine Wright points out here. As Kamala Harris courts Black voters on the trail, Democratic operatives say her campaign is investing notably less in Black paid media and the Black political class. NAACP President Derek Johnson was so frustrated by the dynamic that he held a call with Harris's principal deputy campaign manager, Quentin Fulks, to ask, why aren't minority-owned political firms that typically work with Democratic campaigns getting as much Harris campaign money as white-owned firms? Our look at the high-tension dynamic is playing out behind the scenes, an issue that has evaded Democrats for decades and isn't being corrected by the Harris campaign. And so I only bring that up. So being asked, my 2 cents on it is, duh, this is what they do. So that it speaks to this problem of the incestuous relationship between the commercial Black press.
Let me try to do.
Go ahead.
Bank shot. Let me try to do a combination. I'm going to combine a John Henry Clark and Dr. Ball's statement together.
Oh boy.
I'm going to try that. And by the way, iManifesto, I wasn't plagiarized. They used my name. When they stole my article, they used my name, used my little tag on.
Just took it in your face.
Yeah, just took it, made their money. And you know what's ironic? I was always trying to get into that particular magazine and could never get in it. So when I got in it,
wow.
So when I got in it, it was stolen. I'm not going to mention the magazine.
Shout out to you, Tahir, for catching it. I don't know if everybody caught that, but good for you.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So,
wow.
I didn't, Tahir, so that's good.
Yeah.
But let me do this kind of combo statement. So you telling me the buffer class got upset that they've been now out buffered?
Yeah, that's it. That's the whole point. That's the thing. So you're admitting, and I was hoping by now we would have seen. I hope I haven't missed it. The Roland Martin companion video, because he usually does. He's good for at least 1 or 2 of these a year, where he goes after the white advertising world. He goes after these kinds of things, saying you all aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing in supporting the Black press. And so on the one hand, sure, if that's the game, the Black press should be, don't just be a Black candidate and then say I'm automatically in, so I'm going to diss the Black press.
Right.
But on the other hand, that is the game. And Black readers and audience members are in fact suffering because it impacts negatively, I would argue, the analysis and the content of the news. And it's speaking to this problem that obviously relates to my argument around buying power, but it extends to what we were even saying with the cartoon. It's the microcosm of the cartoon, that those in power are able to manipulate public opinion by shaping a media environment and how issues are covered or not covered, all to have the media play the function they're meant to play, which is to create an environment that allows the extraction to go unfettered.
To understand the tradition, if you go and read Wayne Dawkinson's book, his first book on the National Association of Black Journalists called Black Journalists, the NABJ story, NMPA attacks NABJ when it first comes out, says they're fake, phony, not real Black community representatives. So NABJ does an olive branch, and they have this kind of dual meeting at the Carter White House where they get to talk to President Carter, interview him together. You know, not unlike what we just saw recently with the Black journalist interviewing Kamala, right? Same pattern, right? So the NABJ people, you know, start asking questions about foreign policy, Cuba, you know, the PLO, stuff like that. The NMPA people stand up and go, why aren't you advertising in my newspaper? It's in Wayne Dawkins' book. I'm not making it up.
That's hilarious.
I'm not making it up.
And anybody who's been to an NABJ event would know, just know off rip that that's how it would be.
But just go to an NMPA event and see. I mean, you want to talk about, go to an NMPA event and see what that's like. So like Roland Martin is representing people who've been doing that for like 30, 40, 50 years. And I agree. I mean, if that's the game, yeah, give Roland Martin some money. Absolutely. I mean, Lord knows he covered enough of the CBC and he's covered enough Kamala stuff to deserve something, right? I mean, literally, if a Black journalist deserves something from Kamala Harris, it's Roland. So yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Now the funny thing is they won't give that money, but then when they get elected, they're going to appoint a Black media representative. There's literally a Black media person whose job it is to only speak to the Black media, to Black-owned media. So they'll appoint that person and give them a job, but they won't give out the money. But from their point of view, let's take their point of view for a second. If you got all these millennial social media people on your team already, if you got all of these Ivy League educated political consultants on your team already, if you got all these people who are on MSNBC all day long representing the Democratic Party, 6-figure people already, why? Black people watch MSNBC all day long because all it's about is Donald Trump, he stink real bad. That's me quoting Amiri Baraka talking about Colin Powell. And Kamala Harris is going to save American democracy. That's what MSNBC airs all day, every day. And every third guest is a Black political operative or Black nonprofit director who's making 6 figures, who's being funded by these people. That's a lot of money already. Why spend extra when you know you got a Black audience watching MSNBC?
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.